End of summer, beginning of solitude. 𝙽𝚘𝚝𝚜, 20th of March, year 2020. I ran down the hall making a clumping sound and took a slide at the end. Namjoon was standing in front of our classroom. That's why I called the classroom 𝙽𝚘𝚝𝚜 now. The classroom for all 7 of us. I quietly tiptoed up to Namjoon to try to knock his hat off. Principal, I heard the urgent voice through the slightly open window of our classroom after I'd taken about 5 steps towards Namjoon. It sounded like Seokjin. I stopped there. Seokjin is talking with the principal in our classroom? About what? I heard my name and Jungkook's name and saw Namjoon breathing heavily. Sensing our presence, Seokjin threw open the door. He had a phone in his hand. He appeared startled and flustered. I hid myself in one corner and watched them. Seokjin was opening his mouth, seemingly to make an excuse for himself, and Namjoon interrupted him. It's okay, there must have been a good reason. I couldn't believe it. Seokjin told the principal what Jungi and I were up to the last few days, about how we ditched class, climbed over the school wall and got into a fight, and Namjoon was saying it was okay. What you doing here? I turned around in surprise to find Hoseok and Jimin. Hoseok gave me a look that said he was even more surprised than I was and put his arm around my shoulders. He dragged me into the room. Namjoon and Seokjin looked over at us. Namjoon beamed at me as if nothing strange had happened. At that moment, I sorted out my thoughts. Namjoon must have his reasons. He's much more knowledgeable, intelligent, and mature than I am. And this is our room. I walked towards Namjoon and Seokjin, smiling that silly looking smile of mine that everyone called a square smile. I decided not to tell anyone about that conversation that I just overheard. Namjoon, 15th of May, year 2020. I cut across the classroom to 𝙽𝚘𝚝𝚜's room, which served as a hideout for the 7 of us, straightening up some chairs along the way. I picked up an overturned desk and wiped the dust off it with my palms. Today was my last day at this school. My family had decided to move 2 weeks ago. Dad had developed complications, which we couldn't afford. Our rent had been overdue for months. Our neighbors' goodwill and the pay for my part-time job at the gas station couldn't cover it all. We had to move before our deposit ran out. I folded a piece of paper in half, put it on the desk, and picked up a pencil. I had no idea what to write. Minutes passed. While I was scribbling on the paper, the pencil lead snapped. I must survive. That was what I put down without realizing it before fragments of black lead scattered all over. I crumpled out the piece of paper, put it in my pocket, and stood up. Dust rose when I pushed the desk before walking out the room. I blew on the window and wrote 3 words. No farewell message would be enough to let others know how I felt. At the same time, no farewell message was needed to make myself understood. See you again. It was a wish rather than a promise. Jungkook, 25th of June 2020. I smoothed down the piano keys with my fingers, thus covering my fingertips. I pressed the keys more strongly, but I couldn't make them sound like Jungkook did. It had been 2 weeks since Jungkook stopped coming to the school. Rumor had it that he was finally expelled. Hasek didn't say anything, and I didn't ask. On that day 2 weeks ago, Jungkook and I were the only ones in the room when the teacher came in. It was open house day. We went there without any plan. We just didn't want to stay in our classrooms. Jungkook didn't look back and went on playing the piano. I was lying on 2 desks, put together with my eyes closed. Something about Jungkook and the piano didn't seem to match, but the two were actually inextricable. I had no idea how much time had passed. Suddenly, the door burst open with thunderous sound, as if someone had broken it down. The piano stopped. I kept backing away as the teacher slapped my face until I fell down. I sat hunched up, putting up with the ceaseless stream of abusive words. All of a sudden, the teacher stopped yelling. I looked up to see Jungkook stepping between and pushing the teacher's shoulder. I could also see the teacher's dumbfounded look over Jungkook's shoulders. I pressed the keys and tried to mimic the tune he'd played that day. Will he really be expelled? Will he ever come back? He said he was used to being hit and kicked by teachers. If I went there, would he still have turned against the teacher? If I went there, would he still be playing the piano here? Jungkook, 21st of June 2020. As soon as I stepped into the room, I took out an envelope from the bottom drawer of the desk. I took out the half-burned piano key from the envelope, threw it into the trash can, and lay down on the bed. I was still breathing hard and couldn't stop my mind from racing. I went back to the burned-down house once after the funeral. A skeleton of what used to be a piano was still standing where Mom's room used to be. I flopped down on the ground. The afternoon sunlight climbed over the window and then shrank away. I raised my head and saw several piano keys in the distance. What notes were they? How many times had her fingers touched those keys? I stood up and put one of the keys in my pocket. 4 years had passed. The house was filled with silence. Silence that drove me crazy. It was past 10, so Dad must have gone to bed. Everything and everyone inside the house had to keep still after he went to bed. That was the rule. I wasn't familiar with such deep silence, or with being punctual and following the rules. It was even more unbearable that I was living in this house despite all that. I was receiving an allowance from him, I was eating dinner with him, and I was getting scolded by him. I sometimes challenged him and caused trouble, but I didn't have the courage to tell him to run away and find true freedom. I picked the piano key out of the trash can under my desk. When I opened the window, the night air blew in. My mind replayed the events of the day in quick succession. I threw the piano key out of the window with all my might. It had been 2 weeks since I went to school. They said I was expelled. I might get kicked out of the house even if I wanted to stay. I couldn't hear the piano key hit the ground. Now, I'd never know what note it made. It'd never make a sound again. I'd never play the piano again. Seokjin, 17th of July 2020. The shrill whine of cicadas hit my ears as soon as I stepped out of the school building. The playground was full of students laughing, playing and racing around. It was the beginning of summer vacation and everyone was excited. I wove my way quickly through the crowd with my head down. All I wanted was to get out of there. 𝙽𝚘𝚝𝚜! Someone's shadow jumped into my path and I hastily raised my head. It was 𝙽𝚘𝚜 and 𝙽𝚘𝚝. They were smiling their big, kind-hearted smiles as always, and looked at me with mischievous eyes. "You're not going straight home on the first day of vacation, are you?" 𝙽𝚘𝚜 said, tugging at my arm. I muttered something that sounded like "yes," and turned my head away. What had happened that day was an accident. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't think Jungkook and Jungkook would be there in the classroom storage room at that hour. The principal was suspecting that I was covering for the others. He threatened to tell Dad how bad I was doing at school. I had to say something. I told him about our hideout because I thought it'd be empty, but it led to Jungkook getting expelled. No one knew I was mixed up in it. "Have a good vacation. Let's keep in touch." 𝙽𝚘𝚜 must have read my face. He slowly let go of my hand and said goodbye even more brightly. I couldn't reply. There was nothing I could say. My first day at the school crossed my mind and I passed through the school gate. We were all late and got punished, but we were together, so we could laugh together. I had ruined all those memories we shared. After I decided to live like Dad wanted me to, after I made up my mind not to chase happiness, I had bitten off more than I could chew. 𝙽𝚘𝚜, 15th of September 2020. Jimin's mom walked across the emergency room towards the bed. She checked the name tag of the foot of the bed and the dangling IVs above it and removed a dry blade of grass from Jimin's shoulder. I hesitantly walked towards her and bowed. I felt I had to tell her what Jimin ended up in the emergency room and how he had a seizure at the bus stop. Jimin's mom seemed to realize I was there for the first time, but she immediately turned her eyes away after saying a quick thank you without waiting for me to explain. It wasn't until the doctors and nurses began to move his bed and I was about to follow that Jimin's mom glanced at me again. She thanked me once again and pushed my shoulders. On second thought, she didn't actually push me. She just placed her hand on my shoulder and quickly removed it. In that fleeting moment, a line was drawn between us. The line was firm and solid. It was cold and indelible. I'd never be able to cross over the line. I lived at an orphanage for more than 10 years. I could recognize lines like that with all my senses, see it in people's eyes and feel it in the atmosphere. I stepped back disconcertedly and fell backwards. Jimin's mom just gazed at me blankly. She was small and beautiful, but her shadow was large and chilly. That large shadow cast over me as I sat crumpled on the emergency room floor. When I looked out, Jimin's bed was gone. Jungkook, 30th September 2020. Jungkook, you don't still go there, do you? I just looked down at the toes of my sneakers. I refused to answer, so the teacher struck my head with the attendance book. I still didn't give in. It was where we hung out since I first stepped into their room. Not that they had passed without me stopping by. The others would have known. They had all the plans and part-time jobs and didn't always reply. Jungkook and 𝙽𝚜𝚜 sometimes didn't show up for days, but I was different. I went there without exception. There were days even No one else came. That was fine with me. It was fine because that room was there and because the others would show up later or tomorrow or the next day. I knew you were hanging out with the wrong crowd. The attendance book hit my head again. When I raised my eyes and stared at the teacher, the attendance book came down again. The scene of Jungkook getting beat floated in my mind. I clenched my teeth and restrained myself. I didn't want to lie and say I didn't go there. And then I was standing in front of the room. It felt as if the others were there on the other side of the door. When it opens, they look back and complain about what took me so long. Seokjin and Namjoon must be reading. Taeyeon must be playing a game. Jungkook must be in front of the piano, and Hoseok and Jimin must be dancing. But when I opened the door, only Hoseok was there. He had come to clear out what was left of our things. I stood frozen with my hand on the door knob. Hoseok came towards me, put his arm over my shoulders and walked me back outside. Let's go. The door of the room closed behind us. I realized then and there, those days were gone. I would never come again.